Hey everyone, welcome to the Rabbit Hutch Sews. Today I'm going to be doing a video on how I match stripes when I'm sewing a top. That is one of the most common questions I get when I post a garment with stripes, is how do you do that? So I'm going to show you how I line up the pattern pieces for cutting out the garment, as well as what I do when I'm sewing the garment together. So let's get started. Okay, so we are going to cut out our pattern pieces now, and there are a couple different ways you can do this. Sometimes, depending on the fabric, it's easier to leave the fabric face up and use your pattern piece and just flip it over instead of cutting on the fold. Some fabrics along the selvage edge are kind of curly, and so it makes it difficult to make sure you're matching the stripes up, and then they might get cut kind of wonky instead of going parallel across. So instead of folding the fabric, you can leave it open like this, and then you can trace your pattern piece. So you would lay your pattern piece out, and you would trace around your pattern piece, and then you could just flip the pattern piece over and trace the other way. That way you can make sure your stripes are going horizontally across the body and aren't on a wonky angle. So if you have a fabric that tends to curl, you can do it that way and you'll get a more accurate cut. Now this is where we're going to line up. So where the arm side meets the bodice, that little armpit corner there, is what we are going to use to make sure that all our stripes are going to match. So wherever you decide to put this on the fabric, you will need to do for all of the pieces. So you could put it, I usually put it on the top or bottom of a stripe. You could put it in the middle of the stripe too, but wherever you decide to put it, then your front, your back, and your sleeves all need to go ahead and match. So I'm going to go ahead and lay my pattern piece out and trace it, and then I will show you how to do the sleeves as well. Okay, so you can see that our points are in the same spot on both sides where the bodice and the arm side meet. So you can see the stripes are horizontal and they're going across evenly, they're not on an angle. And then once you have ensured that your stripes are how you want them and that the points match, you can go ahead and cut that piece out, and then you will repeat the same thing for your back bodice piece as well. Okay, so let's move to cutting out our sleeves. Now I am using a projector, don't let that confuse you. This would be just like your pattern piece, I just have mine projected. So with this fabric, I can actually fold it and see the stripes pretty easily and know that they're aligned. So instead of cutting one sleeve and then mirroring and cutting another, I'm just going to go ahead and fold so I can cut two mirrored at one time. Now this, again, if you have a fabric that's kind of curly along the selvage or harder to see, to know that your stripes are lined up, then you could just cut two mirror images one at a time. That way you can see the stripe and know that they're matching. So once you have your fabric folded, you are going to take those same points, like where the arm side met the bodice, where this is where the sleeve cap meets the part that goes down the arm, and you're going to match that to the same stripe. Now, because we have a specific stripe, we have to make sure we're matching it to the same specific stripe. Now, if you had all the same color stripe, it wouldn't matter. You could just pick any bottom of any stripe. But because this is a different stripes, then you have to make sure you match it to the right one. So I'm going to do that, take my 2 points, and I'm going to match them up to that same stripe. So I'm going to slide this up, and then I will be able to go ahead and trace my sleeve, making sure both sides, both of those 2 points are lined up on the bottom of that stripe, just like I did my front and back bodice. And then I will be able to trace this and cut out my 2 sleeves. So I've gone ahead and I've sewn my front and back bodice pieces together at the shoulder seams, and I like to lay my bodice pieces wrong side up, and then I just flip the arm side up. That's just how I like to work with it. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my sleeve pieces. Now you should have a notch marked on your pattern piece where the center of that shoulder is, and that's going to go ahead and match up with your shoulder seam on the bodice. So I clipped that so I can see where it is, and then I'm going to take that, and that matches right up with that shoulder seam. So I'm going to match the notch with the seam and pin it in place. And then I like to take both of my corners and pin those together. And now I do this with all of my sleeves, not just striped bodices. This is just how I like to do my sleeves. But once you have both of those corners pinned in place, then we will go ahead and match up the stripes between pins. So we have our shoulder, or our sleeve, excuse me, and our bodice, and we're going to find the top of those stripes on both pieces and then match them together. So see the stripes on both the bodice and on the shoulder. You'll match those up and put a pin and pin it in place. And then you can go ahead and ease in between those two pins, secure that spot with a pin, and then we're going to go on to the next stripe. So we find the bottom of the stripe on the bodice and the sleeve, and you're going to go ahead and match those up and pin it in place. And then again, you'll ease the rest in between the top shoulder seam and that pin. Now, you can also use Wonder Tape to hold things in place. I find that a little more awkward when you're attaching this sleeve to the bodice, but I'll show you how to do that on the side seams. But then we're just going to repeat the same thing on this side. We're going to find the top of the stripe on both sides, both the body and the sleeve, and pin it in place. Then you can pin and secure in between those two. Now you can see I do my pins a little bit differently. Most people put them in this from vertical, but I like doing them parallel to my seam. I feel like it just holds the fabric a little more. That's personal preference. I'm not sure why I even started doing it that way, but it's how I do it and I like it. So again, this bottom stripe, I'm going to go ahead and match and pin, and then we'll just ease the fabric in between the stripes and between the shoulder seam. Okay, so you will do this exact same thing for your other sleeve piece. Okay, so I'm at my serger now, and I'm going to show you how I do this with pins. So I really just take my time. So I'm going to serge, and then I'm going to stop at the top of that stripe and just look, making sure that they're still matched. If I need to pull the top or the bottom, I can do that and adjust it. That's the nice thing about knits. You can kind of stretch to make things work for you. Again, I'm going to check that stripe. Once I ensure it's lined up, I will continue serging around the top and on to the bottom of the next stripe, where again, I will stop, make sure they're still lined up, and then continue serging. Good, so we're going to serging around, same thing on this last stripe. Check to make sure that they are lined up. They look good, keep going, and finish serging the shoulder. So now that we have that on, let me flip it right sides out real quick, and you can see that the stripes are pretty lined up. Not perfect, but pretty good. And then you will just go ahead and repeat the same thing for the other shoulder. Now that we have our sleeves attached, we're going to go ahead and lay it out, and I'm going to show you how I pin up my side seams. I will also show you how you can use Wonder Tape as well. So you're going to want to, just like we did, match each stripe going from the sleeve, down the sleeve, and then around down the bodice. Now for this, I just pin at every stripe. I'll just match it up, place a pin, and then move on to the next stripe, making sure that I match each stripe, and I will do this all the way down the sleeve and then around down the bodice as well. Alright, so now I'm going to flip it over and just show you how you can also use Wonder Tape. If you don't have Wonder Tape, I think it's a great tool to keep on hand. You could use it for hems, sewing on zippers, matching up stripes. I just order big rolls off Amazon, so I will link that in the description. But I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to place a piece of tape in the seam allowance. That's going to go from the sleeve, and I'm going to take that to the armpit. I'll do it in 2 separate sections, since you kind of have that curve around. It's just easier to do it around. So once you have the tape placed, you can take off the protective layer so that we can go ahead and fold the fabric over, matching the stripes and putting them right sides together and sealing it with the tape. So match the stripe, and then go ahead and stick that down. So just like with pins, I'm going to match each stripe and then secure it to the Wonder Tape. Now this Wonder Tape does wash away, so once you wash your garment, it's going to wash right out. It's not going to gum up your machine. So again, just take each stripe just like I did with pins, but this time I'm just pressing it and securing it with the tape. Okay, I'm going to go continue down the entire side of the sleeve. And I do like to push my seams opposite directions. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to make sure I don't have any lumps and bumps, just straightening out. Now you can pull off the Wonder Tape and reattach. That's a nice thing about the Wonder Tape. So if you, like I had a spot that didn't quite stretch right between stripes, I just pull it away and re-seal it. Okay, once you have your sleeve and it's lying flat, you can go ahead and take another piece and you'll do the same thing down the side of the bodice. Now that will hold in place when we're serging, so you'll just serge right over that tape, down the sleeve and down the bodice. Now I will go ahead and finish pinning and taping mine, and then I will show you how I serge the 2 different methods. So I'm at my serger again, and I'm going to do the pin side just the same way we did the sleeves, where I'm just going to serge, taking pins out as I go, and as I get to each stripe, I'm just going to look, real quick check, make sure they're still lined up, and continue on. And I'm going to do this same thing all the way down the sleeve seam, around down the bodice, just like we did when we set in our sleeves. Okay, now that we have done our pin side, I'm going to show you how I do the side with the tape. Now, you don't have to stop and check because the Wash Away Wonder Tape is going to hold everything in place. So you'll just be able to serge right on down that seam without having to stop and check like we did with our pins. So you just go ahead, because the tape has everything, it's not going to really shift on you. Then you go down the side seam of the sleeve and then down the side seam of the bodice. So now I'm just going to go ahead real quick and turn these right side out just so you can see how our stripe matching looks. There you go, we got some nicely matched stripes, and both sides look pretty good. So there you go down the bodice. Now it's the same thing on the other side. Stripes nicely matched up. And that is how I cut out and sew my garments with stripes. I hope you found this video helpful and that the next time you sew something with stripes, it's a breeze. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.